Welcome, the Lord's chosen. You never truly know who's praying for you or who's praying against you until God starts answering your prayers. Something just shifted in the atmosphere. You can feel it. The energy around you changed. The silence feels heavier, and people who used to laugh a little too loud when you struggled are suddenly quiet. Not peaceful quiet, panicked quiet. The kind that comes when karma finally reads the group chat. Because let's be honest, the chosen ones have a strange kind of luck. It's not the everything's easy type, it's the I survived what should have destroyed me type. You walk through storms and somehow come out glowing, and people can't make sense of it. Scientists say the human body replaces every cell within 7 years. But your transformation didn't take years. It took a heartbreak, a betrayal, and one divine, enough is enough. And now, something massive just happened in the unseen. The tables didn't just turn, they flipped, broke, and got replaced with a throne that fits only you. Behind those polished smiles and filtered selfies, some folks are crying behind closed doors, not because you failed, but because you didn't. Because they're realizing too late that they were never fighting you. They were fighting your anointing. See, life has a dark sense of humor. The same ones who mocked your silence are now whispering your name in confusion. The ones who said you'd never bounce back are now pretending they always believed in you. It's poetic, really. You became the plot twist they didn't see coming. So buckle up. What's unfolding now isn't revenge, it's revelation. The storm that tried to bury you just watered the roots of your purpose, and now everyone who threw shade is about to watch you bloom in broad daylight. Number 1, they laughed when you fell, but now they're terrified because you rose without their permission. When you stumbled, they smirked. They found joy in your confusion, comfort in your chaos, and relief in your silence. It gave them a sense of control, as if your downfall proved they were somehow above you. They convinced themselves you'd never bounce back, because in their minds, you were supposed to stay in that broken version of yourself forever. What they didn't realize was that pain has a way of turning humble souls into unstoppable forces. You didn't rise out of revenge. You rose because staying down no longer matched your identity. Every setback became a classroom. Every betrayal became a teacher. You learned to stop defending your name and started rebuilding your peace. And that's what unsettles them the most. Not your comeback, but the calm that followed it. You didn't return loud or desperate for validation. You came back different, grounded, glowing, and completely untouchable. Now they're the ones uncomfortable. They don't understand how you're smiling without their approval, succeeding without their support, or thriving without their presence. It's confusing to them because their power only existed when you were weak. Now that you've grown beyond their reach, their confidence shrinks. You became living proof that their opinions were never your ceiling, just noise you outgrew. The truth is they can't handle your independence. It threatens the version of reality they built where you were always the underdog. They're watching you move with grace and strength they didn't know you had, and it shakes them. Because deep down they realize you never needed them. They needed you. And now that you've found yourself again, they've lost the one person who made them feel important. Their laughter has turned into nervous silence, and that silence, that's fear disguised as respect. They know now, you rose, and nothing they do can undo it. Number 2, their conscience is now their punishment. They thought walking away from what they did to you would be easy. They laughed, moved on, and acted like you were just another phase, another lesson someone else had to learn. But the funny thing about conscience is that it doesn't need witnesses to do its work. It shows up quietly at night, when the lights are off and the performance is over. That's when the guilt begins to whisper. At first, they brushed it off. They told themselves you deserved it. They justified the betrayal, the gossip, the manipulation. But over time, that inner voice grew louder. Every reminder of you, a name, a place, a song, reopens the part of them that knows they crossed a line they can't uncross. They didn't expect that memory of you to follow them around like a shadow that refuses to fade. You never had to curse them or seek revenge. Life does that on its own. When someone wrongs a good soul, it doesn't go unaccounted for. The conscience starts to echo what they buried, and the deeper they try to hide it, the heavier it becomes. They smile on the outside, but inside they're restless, replaying moments, rewording conversations, wishing they could undo what's already been done. There's no peace in pretending to be unbothered when your spirit knows better. They can't escape the quiet guilt of realizing they hurt someone who meant them no harm. You might have cried for a while, but they'll live with a kind of silence that eats at their spirit. It's not karma in flames. It's karma in thoughts. Every night, every unshakable flash of memory, every twinge of regret that they can't explain. And that's the thing. Your healing became their haunting. You moved forward, but they stayed behind, stuck in a loop of their own making. Their conscience became the punishment they can't serve time for, only live through. Number 3. You were the test they failed. Some people come into your life not to stay, but to reveal who you really are, and in the process, who they really are. You were placed there as a measure, a silent benchmark of integrity, loyalty, and character. They didn't know it at the time. They treated it like a game, a stage, or even a convenience. They thought your presence was something to manipulate, to underestimate, or to dismiss. But you were never the problem. You were the test, and they failed. Every lie they told, every betrayal they plotted, every moment they chose selfishness over honesty was another question on the test. They didn't realize that life has a way of making the answers obvious and the grades unavoidable. You weren't just passing through their story. You were the measuring stick against which their true nature would be revealed. And when they failed, the consequences didn't just affect them externally, they hit their conscience, their credibility, and their peace. You moved through their games with clarity and restraint. You didn't need to expose them or make a scene. Their failure was visible without your interference. Their actions spoke louder than words, and in their failure the truth of who they were was laid bare. People who thought they could manipulate the narrative of your life discovered that the universe has its own narrative, one that doesn't require their consent to be written, and now they're seeing it. The very energy they underestimated, the very presence they tried to belittle, is what defines their loss. They are haunted by the realization that they failed a test they didn't even know they were taking. Your integrity, patience, and growth became a reflection of what they lacked, and that reflection is impossible to ignore. They can no longer pretend they were innocent participants. They were tested, they failed, and now they are living with the proof staring back at them every time they see you rise, thrive, and shine without them. You were the quiet authority in their story, and they flunked spectacularly. Number 4, they mocked what they couldn't master. They laughed at your calm because they couldn't find their own. They called you distant, strange, or too serious, not because you were, but because your steadiness made their chaos uncomfortable. Your peace wasn't passive, it was power wrapped in stillness, and they couldn't figure out how you maintained it without falling apart. So they mocked it. That was their only way of feeling taller without actually growing. Your discernment irritated them. You saw through people's intentions, their fake smiles, their performative apologies, and that scared them. You were never fooled by charm, and you didn't play the politics of pretending. You made quiet choices that spoke volumes, and that kind of inner clarity is dangerous to those who live off illusions. So instead of admitting they admired your depth, they labeled you cold or hard to read. It's easier to laugh at what they don't understand than to admit envy. And your resilience, that's what truly broke them. Every time life knocked you down, you didn't just get back up. You returned sharper, wiser, lighter. They couldn't handle that kind of rebound. They expected your pain to keep you weak, to make you crawl for validation, but you didn't. You learned how to rebuild yourself in silence, and that silence unnerved them. You made survival look graceful. Now they can't look at you without seeing what they tried to destroy. Every time they see your confidence, it reminds them of their cowardice. Every time you glow in peace, it mirrors their unrest. They mocked what they couldn't master, your ability to walk through fire and not smell like smoke. Their laughter was never about you. It was a disguise for their frustration, because deep down they know the truth. You became everything they pretended to be. And that realization burns louder than any insult they ever threw your way. Number 5, the same energy they sent returned dressed in lessons. Life has a way of balancing its own books. When they lied, cheated, or tried to dim your light, they thought they got away with it. They thought silence meant victory. But the universe doesn't operate on your timing. It operates on truth. And truth always returns to the sender, not out of anger, but out of balance. What they sent out came back, only this time it wasn't wrapped in drama. It came disguised as lessons, delays, losses, and emptiness they can't explain. You didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to curse them, expose them, or compete. You just had to heal. And while you were busy growing, that same energy they used to harm you circled back to them like a mirror, reflecting everything they tried to project onto you. That's why their smiles don't reach their eyes anymore. That's why their confidence feels shaky. They're not cursed. They're just being shown who they really were through their own experience. When people send darkness, it doesn't disappear. It travels. And if it can't find you anymore because your frequency no longer matches theirs, it simply returns home. What they meant for your downfall became their own awakening. The betrayals they justified now return as betrayals in their world. The manipulation they use now shows up in their relationships. Every seed of deceit they planted bloomed, but not in your garden. This isn't punishment, it's correction. The universe isn't cruel, it's consistent. It teaches through repetition until awareness sets in. They called it bad luck, but deep down they know. What they gave out came back wearing different clothes, lessons instead of people, pain instead of peace. You didn't get revenge, you got release. They didn't get away with it, they got educated. And that's how divine justice works, quiet, precise, and inescapable. Number 6, you became the proof that pain can't kill purpose. They really thought that what they did to you would finish you. The gossip, the betrayal, the isolation, it was all designed to crush your sense of worth. They wanted to see you crumble, to confirm that without their approval or presence you would lose direction. But pain has this strange power. It either destroys you or it awakens you. And in your case, it did the latter. You turned your wounds into wisdom, your heartbreak into hunger, and your losses into lessons. What was meant to bury you only forced your roots deeper. You stopped seeking sympathy and started seeking strength. You began to understand that pain isn't proof that you're cursed. It's proof that you're chosen to evolve. Every disappointment redirected you to something stronger, clearer, more aligned with who you truly are. And now, your life carries the kind of peace that can't be faked and a glow that can't be bought. Your purpose didn't die in the dark. It was built there. It came alive the moment you stopped trying to understand why they hurt you and started focusing on how it shaped you. They expected the old you to show up, broken, desperate, defeated. But instead you became the version of yourself that even you didn't know existed. That's the real miracle. Now they have to watch. They see you thriving, not out of revenge, but out of alignment. You're walking in rooms they never believed you'd enter, shining in ways they can't explain. Every success you have is a reminder that no one can bury what was born to rise. You became living evidence that pain is not a full stop. It's a comma in the story of purpose. They thought they ended your chapter, but all they did was help you start a better one. Number 7, they're realizing you were the glow, not the spotlight. They used to think your presence didn't matter that much. You weren't the loudest one in the room, you weren't demanding to be seen, and you didn't chase applause. You just were, steady, genuine, and consistent. They mistook that calm energy for weakness, not realizing it was the very thing holding everything together. You weren't the spotlight that steals attention. You were the glow that gave everything around you its warmth, balance, and color. While they were busy performing for recognition, you were the quiet force, keeping the atmosphere grounded. When things fell apart, you were the one they vented to, leaned on, or drew strength from. But they never credited you for it. They thought they could remove you and nothing would change. But the truth always reveals itself when the light leaves. Because once you stepped away, the room went dim. The same people who once overlooked you started feeling the emptiness they created. Suddenly, conversations felt hollow. The laughter sounded forced. The peace they took for granted disappeared. That's when it hit them. Your energy wasn't background noise. It was the rhythm that made everything flow. They never understood that real influence doesn't announce itself. It simply radiates. Now they're trying to recreate what they lost, chasing the same calmness, the same authenticity, the same effortless stability you carried. But it doesn't work that way. The glow wasn't something you gave them. It was who you are. They could only experience it when they were aligned with you. Once they broke that alignment, the light faded, and no amount of spotlight can replace that kind of soul-driven presence. What they miss isn't your attention, it's your energy. And now they understand the difference between being seen and being felt. They had the glow in their midst and treated it like background light. Only now in the dark do they finally see how much brightness you truly brought. Number 8, your absence is louder than their presence ever was. You didn't slam doors or stage an exit. You just stopped showing up, and that's what broke the balance. Your silence wasn't a strategy. It was self-respect, finally speaking on your behalf. You didn't owe explanations anymore because deep down, they already knew what they did. Your withdrawal wasn't meant to punish them. It was the natural consequence of outgrowing what no longer matched your peace. And that quiet step back made more noise than any argument ever could. They didn't notice your value when you were there because they were too comfortable having you around. You were the one who brought life into dull spaces, perspective into chaos, and calm into tension. Your words carried weight, but even your presence alone had a grounding effect. When you left, they thought they could replace it with noise, attention, or distractions. But none of it filled the void. Suddenly their laughter didn't sound as real, and their victories didn't feel as satisfying. That's the difference your energy made. Now they're learning that presence isn't about proximity, it's about impact. You were never loud, but your spirit filled every room you entered. Your energy lingered in the best way, the kind that made people feel seen, understood, and balanced. When that disappeared, they finally noticed what they had mistaken for ordinary. The absence of your light exposed how dim everything else really was. People who thought they were the main characters are now realizing they were only shining because you stood beside them. Without you, the atmosphere feels flat. The depth, the warmth, the meaning is gone. You didn't have to say a word to prove your worth. Life did it for you. Your absence spoke in echoes that still haven't faded. And the silence you left behind isn't emptiness, it's evidence. Evidence that your energy was never background. It was the heartbeat of the whole space. Number 9, they're seeing that grace has consequences. They thought forgiving them meant you were weak. They assumed your patience and understanding were signs that you could be walked over without pushback. They laughed at your restraint, thinking it was nothing more than passivity. But grace isn't weakness. It's the last line before justice intervenes. It's the quiet authority that says, I see you, I forgive you, but your actions have limits. And when those limits are reached, grace doesn't shout. It simply steps aside and lets the consequences arrive. Every time you extended kindness or overlooked betrayal, you weren't giving them a free pass. You were giving yourself clarity, space, and energy to grow. You weren't tolerating their actions. You were keeping yourself unchained from their chaos. And while they misread that as vulnerability, what they didn't realize is that your grace was also a countdown. You were holding back storms while quietly building your own strength. When you finally stopped explaining, stopped justifying, and stopped proving your worth, the universe didn't pause. It began to expose the cracks in their armor, revealing their hypocrisy, insecurity, and deceit in ways you never could. Grace wasn't about letting them off the hook. It was about giving them room to see themselves before life forced the lesson. Every lie, every betrayal, every attempt to manipulate now meets its own reflection, and they can't run from it. They're starting to feel it. Their false confidence, their mockery, their sense of superiority, all of it is being stripped away quietly, naturally, and inescapably. And the most terrifying part for them is that you didn't have to lift a finger. Your grace, your patience, and your refusal to descend into chaos did the work. It taught them that mercy has boundaries, and ignoring those boundaries only invites consequences. Now they're witnessing firsthand that grace isn't weakness. It's power wrapped in silence, patience dressed as stillness, and a warning that finally, inevitably, becomes unavoidable. Number 10, they tried to rewrite your story, but destiny doesn't take edits. They thought if they controlled the story, they could control the outcome. They spread rumors, twisted details, and tried to turn people against you because truth threatened their version of events. It wasn't about what you did. It was about who you were. Your integrity exposed what they lacked, and instead of changing themselves, they tried to change how others saw you. They underestimated one thing, though. Destiny doesn't negotiate with deception. You watched in silence while lies traveled faster than your truth. But silence has a strange kind of patience. It waits for the noise to burn itself out. And that's exactly what happened. Every false story they told is now unraveling. The same mouths that spoke against you are now tripping over their own contradictions. The same people who believed those lies are starting to see cracks in the performance. It's poetic, really. The truth you didn't rush to defend is now defending you. You see, destiny is authored by something far higher than gossip, jealousy, or manipulation. When you're chosen, your path may get delayed, but it can never be rewritten. The attempts to erase your character only made your purpose louder. They built entire narratives around who you used to be, unaware that you had already evolved beyond that chapter. What they tried to bury became the seed of your reinvention. Now they're facing the plot twist they never saw coming. The people they convinced now watch them with suspicion. Their words no longer hold the same weight because truth has quietly corrected the record. You didn't need revenge, you needed time, and time always sides with authenticity. Destiny doesn't take edits because it's written in ink they can't touch. Every attempt to rewrite your story only proved that your life was too powerful to be narrated by small minds. The author of your purpose never co-signs lies, only revelations. And now, yours is unfolding exactly as it was always meant to. Number 11. You became the mirror that humbled their ego. They never expected you to grow, to evolve, or to rise above the chaos they created. They assumed that the old you was permanent, weak, predictable, and easy to manipulate. But you didn't just survive, you transformed. And now, every time they look at you, they see themselves reflected in ways they can't handle. It's not your actions that bother them. It's the truth your presence reveals about their own failures, insecurities, and stagnation. Your growth became an unspoken accusation. Every confident step you take, every calm decision you make, every success you achieve, is a reminder that they resisted the very evolution they secretly craved. They mocked you before, judged you, and tried to contain you, but your transformation holds a quiet power they cannot imitate. It's a mirror they can't turn away from, no matter how hard they try. They feel exposed. The parts of themselves they've hidden, ignored, or refused to fix are now illuminated simply because you exist differently than they expected. They realize that their pride, arrogance, or laziness has left them behind, and that recognition is painful. What they thought was superiority is now weakness in contrast to your strength. What they thought was power is revealed as insecurity when measured against your consistency and clarity. You didn't have to confront them, prove a point, or seek validation. Your mere presence and evolution did the work. And that's the most humbling truth for them. You became the reflection they can't face without shame, the evidence of what they neglected, and the silent demonstration of what's possible when resilience and self-awareness lead the way. They wanted a version of you that would remain small, but the real you shattered that expectation effortlessly. Now, their discomfort speaks volumes. They can't stand to see you because you are everything they refuse to become, and that reflection, quiet, undeniable, and unshakable, humbles them more than any confrontation ever could. Number 12. Their apology will come when it no longer matters. There's a moment coming when they'll feel the weight of what they did. Maybe they'll stumble upon it in memory. Maybe life will slap them with consequences they never anticipated. Eventually, they'll attempt to make amends, offer excuses, or even whisper, "I was wrong," as if that can undo the past. But by then, your world will have shifted too far from theirs. Your peace, your standards, and your sense of self will have grown so strong that their words will feel cheap, like coins from a treasury that no longer accepts counterfeit. They thought time would erase your memory of their actions, that silence meant weakness, and that absence meant surrender. But silence isn't weakness, it's strategy, and absence isn't surrender, it's elevation. You didn't need to chase closure, because life itself has a way of providing it. Without them, without apology, without their validation, when they finally come, the version of you they left behind no longer exists. The currency has changed. Growth makes forgiveness expensive. It requires acknowledgement, accountability, and transformation, things they never prepared to offer. What they will bring won't meet the value you've built through hardship, lessons, and self-mastery. Their sorry will feel more like noise than reconciliation, because your heart and mind will no longer operate on the same scale as their past behavior. And that's the quiet victory. They'll realize too late that timing isn't just a matter of convenience, it's a reflection of alignment. When their apology finally appears, your peace will be untouchable, your boundaries unshakable, and your growth undeniable. You will have become proof that closure doesn't require them, and that sometimes the lesson isn't in forgiving them, It's in outgrowing them entirely. They'll come, but it won't matter. By then, your life, your energy, and your story will have moved into a space they can't occupy. And that's exactly where it was meant to be. Number 13. You outgrew the room. They tried to trap you in. They were comfortable when you played small, when your dreams were manageable, your confidence dimmed, and your voice uncertain. They could handle you. You fit neatly into the box they built, a version of you that didn't challenge their insecurities or disrupt their comfort. They didn't hate you. They just needed you contained, easy to read, and easy to control. But growth doesn't ask for permission, and purpose doesn't stay confined to someone else's comfort zone. The moment you started expanding, you made them uncomfortable. Your ambition, once cute, became too much. Your self-respect, once admired, became attitude. The same people who told you to know your worth started accusing you of being full of yourself once you did. What they don't understand is that you didn't change for attention. You changed because stagnation started to suffocate you. Divine timing pulled you out of that dimension, and no amount of guilt-tripping could keep you there. Now they're mistaking your evolution for ego, your boundaries for betrayal, your distance for disloyalty. But none of that is true. You just grew beyond the limits of their perspective. You stopped participating in cycles that kept you small, stopped seeking validation in places that only offered crumbs, and started walking toward what was meant for you. They see that as rejection, but it's really ascension doing what it always does, separating what can't rise with you. The truth is, your growth exposed their fear of their own potential. They could have grown with you, but growth requires humility, and not everyone is ready to release control long enough to evolve. So they stay in the room that feels safe, the same one you outgrew. While you move into spaces that match your new vibration, you didn't abandon them, you simply refused to shrink. And if your expansion feels like rejection to them, it's only because they were never meant to follow you into your next level. Number 14. They're crying, not because you're gone, but because they finally see who you were. They aren't crying over your absence because of loss. They're crying because reality finally caught up with them. For years, they underestimated you, dismissed you, or treated you like a shadow in the background. Every slight, every insult, every attempt to hold you down was meant to keep you small. But time has a way of revealing truths that arrogance can't ignore. Now, the same person they once looked down on has grown into someone they can no longer ignore, someone whose presence commands respect without demanding it. It isn't about regret for losing you. They didn't lose you in the way you might think. They lost themselves in the process of misjudging your worth. Every moment they laughed, mocked, or ignored you now weighs on them with the weight of clarity. They can see it all, the resilience, the wisdom, the grace, and the quiet power they failed to recognize. And the realization hurts more than any confrontation ever could. The silence you left behind speaks louder than any words could. They can't argue with the evidence of your evolution, your calm confidence, and your undeniable presence. Every glance they give you now is heavy with understanding that they watched something priceless flourish while thinking it was nothing. Their eyes, once filled with dismissal or disdain, now reflect awe, shame, and the faint sting of humility. And that silence, the one filled with recognition, wonder, and unspoken apology, is their loudest confession. It's louder than any argument, louder than any plea, louder than any attempt to reclaim the past. You didn't need to call them out. Your growth, your peace, and your unwavering sense of self did it for you. Now, they are left with the truth staring them in the face. They underestimated someone they should have cherished all along. They see you now, fully, and that realization is a wound only time and reflection can touch, because by the time they understand, It's far too late to matter. Conclusion. Through every betrayal, every whispered lie, every attempt to dim your light, you became more than they ever imagined. You rose while they doubted, thrived while they mocked, and evolved while they stayed stagnant. Every tear they caused, every door they slammed, and every boundary they tried to break only refined your purpose, sharpened your clarity, and strengthened your presence. The world tried to cage you, to contain your energy, to rewrite your story. But you refused every limitation, stepping into a power that couldn't be measured by their opinions or defined by their actions. You became the embodiment of truth. Your silence spoke louder than their noise. Your absence echoed further than their presence, and your grace revealed the consequences they could no longer escape. You weren't just surviving, you were reigning. Every setback they celebrated became the fuel for your rise. Every act of sabotage became a lesson in resilience, and every doubt they planted became proof that your spirit couldn't be shaken. You transformed pain into purpose, struggle into clarity, and obstacles into stepping stones for the life you were always meant to live. They are crying behind closed doors, not because they lost you, but because they finally see the force they underestimated, the wisdom they failed to honor, and the power they could never master. And while their regret comes too late, your evolution shines brighter than any apology ever could. You didn't just outgrow them, you transcended the limitations they tried to impose. You became the mirror they couldn't face, the glow they tried to dim, and the undeniable proof that destiny doesn't take edits. Your journey isn't about revenge, it's about revelation. That unstoppable force of a soul that refuses to be diminished. This is the story of the chosen one, a story of resilience, of divine timing, and of unshakable purpose. And as you continue to rise, remember that those who doubted you will always watch in silence, because the power you carry is uncontainable, undeniable, and unmistakably yours. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful insights. Like this video if it inspired you, comment below with your thoughts or experiences, and share it with anyone who needs to see the truth about strength, growth, and rising beyond those who doubted them. Your journey matters, and your energy deserves to be celebrated. Stay blessed always.